Welcome back to another lesson in the brew side of the house. Today we're going to talk about starting, and that is, well, for starting, you have to have a starter. So we're going to do a yeast starter today. First thing I want to say about starters is this, and that if you're brewing a batch with an initial gravity of 1050 or less, you probably don't even need a starter. Most of the yeast you buy, the dry ones and the ones that are liquid and those fancy expensive white yeast ones, which are amazing, but again expensive, don't need a starter when you're brewing a batch like that. We do a lot of IPAs here though, and if I'm starting with a gravity of 1080 or 1070 and really want to have the yeast in motion when I pitch it into the wort, well, then we do a starter. There's a lot can be said about water here. Where we're at, our water comes from a well. It's very soft. It's conditioned. It's charcoal filtered twice before it comes out of the tap, and really is very pure. It doesn't have a lot of minerals in it. And you can read a lot about adding calcium carbonate, adding salt to your water, really based on taste more than anything else. For us, the water, because it's so soft, adds nothing as far as flavors go, and we concentrate on all the flavors coming from the grain. Same thing with the yeast. We choose usually it's Safale 05, US 05, which we absolutely love. Thank you, Safale. And it's consistent, adds no flavor to the beer, so lets us be creative with the ingredients. Important tip at this stage of the process. As soon as we get the water to boil, it's a liter of water. There's a half a cup of DME that goes in. Take the pan off the heat before you add the DME and make sure it's not boiling. Unless, of course, you like cleaning up messes, because it will foam up and boil over and you will have a huge mess. And then you can go on from there, but take it from somebody who's learned it the hard way. Don't do that. Take it off the burner, let it set for a minute, add your DME, mix it up and let it dissolve. You know, it gets all clumpy and then it dissolves. And then go back on the heat and put it back on a boil carefully. So you'll see here, we're just going to put it up to a low heat. And once we have that, it starts to simmer again, and then it's just like it is with your wort when you're doing your batch of beer. It's got to go through the hot break. The hot break is that part in the boil where it foams up a lot and then stops foaming all of a sudden. Same sugar change in chemistry as when you're making candy or something like that. Once it's past that, you can boil it more if you want. But don't forget, for the starter here, all we're doing is sanitizing here. This has nothing to do with protein changes or any of the stuff you're doing with your worts. So boil it for at least 10 minutes to make it sanitary, and then we use an Erlenmeyer flask because the biggest reason is because the next tends to stay cool and it's easier to handle. But with your best laboratory technique, pour it into the flask once you're done with your boil. Again, at least 10 minutes on the boil, you're good to go. Once it's in the flask, I'm going to take a piece of sanitized saran wrap and a stopper and cover the lid. During the time that your starter is starting, it doesn't need oxygen. You can shake it up a little bit to give it some, but it's not going to generate a lot of CO2 during that time as well. It's getting ready to go do that, but you want to get it started. So pull it out. Hey, important lesson here too, that flask is hot. Trust it from somebody who knows. And so use a towel or a oven mitt or something when you're handling it, even by the neck. So there's the stopper with the sanitized saran wrap on top, and then we're going to go out and put it in the freezer. For our freezer and the size of starter we make, it takes about 45 minutes up on the top shelf of the freezer to get it down to about 65 degrees. Experiment with your own freezer and see how long it takes. Use an ice bath, put it in the sink, put it in your swimming pool, whatever you want to do. When you get it down to the right temperature though, onto the stir plate it goes, and then in goes the yeast. And under the careful supervision of our little fake chickens, we'll break out the sanitized yeast pack and the sanitized scissors, and with clean hands, we will open up that Safale 05. Again, we love that stuff. It's the best yeast ever. And into the flask it goes. Once it's in the flask, we'll set the speed as sort of a low vortex for the spin and let it keep going to keep the yeast in suspension. About 18 to 24 hours for maximum effectiveness. What happens if you don't brew and you want to keep it? After about 18 to 24 hours, this will keep in the refrigerator for about a week, and you can boil off some of the top and use the bottom part only. Thanks for watching. See you next week.